hear the mic. Whoop, whoop. All right, cool. Thank you for coming to Imagination Brewing tonight. We really appreciate it. I am Jessie. I'm with the Historical Museum. If you have not noticed, there's like this cool exhibit, and there's pictures all around, and there's games on the table, and we're having a good time. The whole idea for the next few hours is to share a memory. Doesn't matter if it's a Montana memory, Missoula memory, just we are the Historical Museum and we're collecting people's oral stories, and that is the fun of tonight. So we hope everyone has a good time and comes up to the mic and shares a story. To get it rolling, I will tell a story of one of my Missoula memories, and we hope everyone else has a good time. Again, we're with the Historical Museum at Fort Missoula. Imagination Brewing has so politely invited us out tonight. You can go into the back room. There's games, there's an exhibit, there's a memory booth, so that in private, if you'd like to tell a story, it can be collected there. We got a great raffle prize. We got swag. If you like trivia, you can come up and ask us some trivia questions, or we'll ask you trivia questions and see if you can answer them, see if you can outsmart the historians here. And don't forget, if you're here tonight, get your beer pass punched, which is this thing if you do not have it. We have 5 events throughout the month around the community, and if you come to 3 of those, you get a free beer at the end of the month. So have a good time and come on up. It's open mic session at Imagination Brewing, so everyone can just have a good time. All right, my story. Let's see here. So I came to Missoula or Montana in 2003, and I had run away from home at that point. So I was living in the back of my truck. I didn't have much to my name other than a saddle, because I was a ranch kid. So I came out west to work on ranches and be a wrangler or whatever was needed. And I had a job up in the Glacier area, but first I came to Missoula, and I was doing laundry over at the laundry store, kind of off Mullen, and I was sitting there eating this jar of olives, like this epic jar of olives I'd gotten off Costco, and I had some jerky, and I'm sitting on the back of my 1987 Dodge 2-wheel drive pickup with like everything I owned in the truck, and I'm hanging out, eating my olives and my jerky, and this guy comes up, and he's a homeless guy, and we're talking, and his name was James, and I was like, oh, that's funny, I'm Jessie, my brother's name's James. As a kid, we used to run around going, I'm Jessie, he's James, give us your money. It never worked, but, you know, we tried. And he was like, when's the last time you ate? And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm eating now, like olives and jerky. Did I just die? Oh, no, I'm back. We're back. And he's like, oh my God, when's the last time you ate? And I was like, I don't know, man. It's been a while. I've been halfway through this jar of Costco olives. We're doing good. And so he's like, all right, this is ridiculous. Come with me. So we went to Fuddruckers, which is my first experience at Fuddruckers. He bought me a burger. We hung out for a little while, got my laundry done, and we parted ways. About 9 years later, I saw him walking down the side of the road, and a lot had changed in my life since living in the back of my truck with my saddle as my pillow and all of my clothes stuffed in a drawer. And I saw him walking down the street, and I jumped out, and at this point I didn't remember his name. I just remembered his face, and I was like, hey, you helped me a long time ago, back when I just came to Montana. You bought me some food. And he's like, yeah, you're Jessie. You're from what, Tennessee, right? Yeah, and do you still drive that old truck? And I'm sitting here going, it's been 9 years, dude. Like, you still remember me? And I'm like, I'm sorry, what's your name? And he's like, well, it's James, because you're Jessie and I'm James. And I'm like, oh, this is pretty interesting. So I ended up giving him, I'd gotten a Christmas gift, and it was a card to Bob Ward's, and I ended up giving him my Bob Ward's card, because I was like, hey man, you helped me out, so here's what I got. And now I see him all over town, and we're always like, hey Jessie, hey James, and it's just like this Missoula thing that just never ends, and it's kind of how my first experience of Missoula was. sitting on the back seat of an old truck, eating olives, getting bought food by a homeless guy. You know you're winning when that happens. So anyway, that's one of my Missoula memories. Come on up anytime. It's open mic. Share a memory. Have a good time.
All right. My name is Daniel DeGray. I am in Missoula, Montana. I moved here 8 years ago, but I was raised on the Flathead Reservation in Hot Springs, Montana, so really small town. And I spent most of my time growing up just kind of like biking around and, you know, causing trouble with my friends, catching crawdads, venturing up creek beds, skipping stones, you know, tag, you know, jungle gym and all that. So it was just, you know, really rural, kind of a rare rural upbringing. My mother, Quiriana, she, from a very, very early age, she brought me to these events called rainbow gatherings, and she'd been going since 1976. They started in 1974, and they are these gatherings of just American, internationals, all sorts of people from all different backgrounds, and they go out and they congregate in the wilderness and they set up kitchens and they feed the people who show up, and these kitchens just kind of acquire donations and funds from around the country, and you know, just like basic food, the essentials, and you know, they cook pastas and rices and kind of just put together these meals, and these people camp out in the woods in the national forests. Usually it's East Coast to West Coast every year, and they pray for world peace. They put up these kitchens, you know, they put on a sarong, they, you know, take off their shoes, take off their socks, and they go, you know, frolic in the meadows of North America. And, you know, I figured, since I have that history and it's kind of a rarity and it's a dying thing, you know, and I know that there's a lot of like protectionist, preservationist, conservationist efforts going on, you know, and I think that the current struggle is to maintain our rights to congregate in the national forest because it's the people's land, and so I figured I'd tell a story about what that's like from the beginning, you know, of planning your adventure and then getting there. So I guess really it's word of mouth, grapevine findings. You can usually talk to someone and acquire directions to the rainbow gatherings, and along the way as you go, you follow cairns that they set up, and these cairns are kind of like periodically on the side of the road, you know, throughout the dirt road that you follow to get there, and elders and community members and just kind of like gathering members pick a site, and so on the way there you'll see these little rock cairns on the side. And every once in a while, like a hippie will jump out of a bush, you know, naked or whatever, and you know, along the way, pretty some radical hillbilly, just kind of like alternative people. And you know, gradually, as you go, cars will start piling up on the side of the road, you know, because there's no parking lots out there, so it's just a lot of woods, and then a lot of people show up, usually generally thousands. And so, you know, me and my brother, I think the most memorable one is we drove in, and we listened to Bob Dylan on the way in. But you know, as you get closer to the center of where like everybody is, where Bus Village is, or what they call a camp, alcohol camp, because alcohol is not allowed into the rainbow gathering, and you got a lot of like potheads and, you know, kind of just peaceful, meditative hippies, you know, in the center, and they allow you to smoke like marijuana, but they don't let you bring in beer or whatever. And that's just a small little detail of that's just the rules that they set forth. And so on the way in, you'll see a lot of like bikers and just kind of like random people from not necessarily there for the world peace, but you get in there and it's just a lot of welcome homes, and there's a lot of smiles and like happy faces, and just, you know, good good people. And you park and you get out, and it's fresh air. You're in the forest, in the national forest, and there's already a beaten trail pulling in, and you got like buses parked everywhere, and you got people pulling supplies out of the buses, and little caravan volunteer efforts, people pulling trolleys and carts down the trail, over roots and over rocks, and just kind of navigating the woods. And as you pack in, you grab your backpack and everything, your supplies, your tent or whatever. You walk in, depending, a few miles, and you'll get to the heart of it, main circle, which is usually a main entrance meadow. And there'll be a trading circle and a drum circle, and kind of just like a few kitchens surrounding the meadow that make up the center of the Rainbow Gathering. My favorite part of the circle is the djembe circle, because you got like a bunch of dread hippie sort redneck hillbillies with their African drums 24/7 throughout the 2 weeks of the summer that it occurs, playing drums, and you got hippies running around naked and everything. It's kind of just like a crazy venue, but it doesn't, there's no like entrance fee or anything. There's no bouncers. It's just kind of like an equal anarchical society where everybody kind of just understands one another and follows the rules and maintains each other. Just like a neighborhood watch situation for 2 weeks. And I've never seen any like serious crime occur, and the crime that did occur, the residents implemented their authority on them without involving the higher authorities. But it's just kind of like almost like a social experiment that's been occurring for a while. And my experience in the past with it was incredible, because it's not just you and a friend going up in the mountains. It's you and a friend going into the mountains and then hiking into a gathering of like thousands of loving, peaceful people, and guitarists and violinists and fiddlers, and just like really awesome raw music. And that happens every year, usually late June, early July. This year I think it's in Oregon, but I've been going since I was a little kid, East and West Coast, and they're always a really great time, and you always meet really cool people, herbalists, hunters, fishermen, people that they go and they put up forts. They build forts in the woods, just basic Boy Scout lashings, and put up tree forts, and they build stages, and then when it's all good and done, they pack up and they put it away, and mission accomplished. They get out, leave no trace, and it's an incredible thing, because there's nothing else quite like it. Like, you could relate it to like Burning Man, or Red Ants Pants, or Grand Targhee Music Festival or something like that, but it's it's just free, and you can go there and eat for free, and people are like diehards. They've been doing it and probably will do it until they die. But I think that it's losing support. I think that not many people know about it, and they don't go for the right reasons anymore. But I figured talking about that would be interesting, and maybe inform you about the alternative venues that exist that are underground and people don't really know about them, and that they should probably know about them, because they're really awesome. All right, I'm done.
All right. Not sure how many people are interested in hearing a story about stupidity, but that's what we're looking at right now. So I guess I'll start just about storytelling in general. When I was in college, me and my friends would always talk about, like, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a really interesting life? Like, you do the coolest stuff, but you couldn't speak well. You could never tell anybody about those things. Like, you would do this awesome trip to like East Asia and like help a bunch of people. Then you come back to America and you want to talk to your friends, and they're like, oh, that's the most boring story in the world. Why would I ever care about that? Like, that's, or would you rather have a really boring life, but be able to tell about it like really well? Like you could sit on your couch all day, and then you could go to your friend's house later and be like, dude, I did this awesome thing today. And he's like, oh man, that's right, that is rad. Like, you did an awesome thing. And I like to think of myself as the latter. I'm not a very interesting person, but I like to think that I can tell a good story. So last week, my girlfriend and I were driving to Portland, Oregon. So we were on 90, and we were going west, and we start seeing, first off, my favorite place in the world is the St. Regis Travel Center. I love corny things like that. You get to see some nice fish, you get to see trout. It's a great place, awesome place to buy all your Christmas presents and whatnot. My friends are similar to myself. They love like corny, stupid stops like that. And I have a friend who lives in Spokane who loves the 50,000 Silver Dollar Bar. Thinks it's the funniest place ever, and it is. It's a horrible, weird, hole-in-the-wall bar where kind of odd people hang out and you buy tacky gifts that no one really wants but everyone likes. And so I was thinking, I was like, oh man, like I'm driving the car, and we start seeing those signs like 45 miles till the 50,000 silver coin bar. 30 miles till the 50,000 silver coin bar. 10 miles till the 50,000 silver coin bar. And I'm starting to get excited. I'm like, man, Casey, my friend Casey loves that place. And I turn to my girlfriend and I'm like, hey Katie, can you take a picture of the 50,000 silver coin bar when we pass it? I just want to send it to Casey. He'll love it. He loves seeing pictures of it. And she's like, yeah, no problem. So I forget about it. I'm driving, and it's kind of rainy, pretty windy. And ahead of me, after like a couple minutes, maybe 5 minutes, I see two oversized load trucks. And I'm like, oh man, like these guys are kicking up a ton of water. It's really hard to see when you get past them. And I'm like getting in the zone. I'm like, man, I gotta get past these trucks, and I don't know how I'm gonna do it. And so I finally like kick it in the left lane, like get in my speed racer mode and just pump it past the first one. And then get back into the right lane so a couple people can pass me. And I've got one more truck and I can't really see. And I flip it in the left lane, gun it, and start going around this truck. And I kind of see Katie, my girlfriend, fidgeting next to me. And I'm like, what the heck are you doing? And so I'm gunning, and I finally, we hit a curve, and I'm curving around this car, and I finally kick it to the right in front of the oversized low truck. And all of a sudden I see her roll down the window, and she goes, oh my God, and I turned my head, and the wind had just taken her phone, and it just flew out of the car. And she's freaking out. She's like, stop the car. I'm like, I can't, I'm going 80. I'm just past a truck. And so I'm slamming on the brakes. She's like, no, it's too late, just go. And so now I'm thinking, trying to find the next exit, and I see the next exit, and it's 5 miles ahead, and I'm like, 5 miles, someone's gonna run it over by the time we get back. And she was like, no, we gotta turn around, we gotta get that phone. So I get off 5 miles, turn around, I'm going way too fast, headed back. I turn around, get back on the highway, find the phone, pull over, and it's obviously completely broken. We were going 90 miles an hour when she dropped the phone out the window, so it's obviously broken. And so she's super upset. And, we're trying to figure out, I don't have a smartphone, so we have no way, we don't have Google Maps, we don't have any way to find where we're going. So we realize we have to stop in Coeur d'Alene to get a new phone for her. And after, that was 2 hours after the silver coin bar. So finally, by the time we're rolling in the Coeur d'Alene, she's finally settled down and realized how hilarious that situation is. Oh, you deserve that first off, because anybody who sticks their phone out a window definitely should just drop the phone. That should happen to everyone who does that. She's over being mad at me for having asked her to take a picture of it, and we're both kind of laughing at the situation. And it was at that point that I turned to her, and I was like, Katie? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, Casey doesn't have a phone that can download pictures. And that was it. That's my story.
Hello everybody, I'm Meredith Prince with the Missoula Community Foundation, and I'm here to tell you about the evolution of a giving day that started out as Give Local Missoula and is now called Missoula Gives. So we're just such a giving community. We all love our community, and as a community foundation we try to figure out how to best strengthen and give back to our community. And so it was 2013, it was November, and I had a call from Angie Myers, who used to work for the Humane Society of Western Montana, and she had already talked to Susan Hay Patrick at the United Way, and she had this idea of doing a giving day in Missoula. She was from Seattle, she had worked at an organization there, and they have a campaign called Give Big, and they raise about $10 million a year. You know, they have $1 million of funds that can be used as matching funds for the nonprofits. And you know, she thought we could do this here in this wonderful community. And so, you know, I went to my board. They weren't sure. We had never done anything like this before, but they said, sure, let's give it a try. Why not? And so, you know, we got planning. It was, let's see, the first day was May 3rd, 2014. And I woke up the morning of that day and I was just so nervous. I mean, I can't believe I even slept, but I did. I slept, I woke up. I was like, I don't know if anybody's gonna give any money. This is a new thing. We had a goal of $100,000 in 24 hours to raise for local nonprofits. And, you know, so we kicked it off at midnight. And I went to sleep and I woke up, and then when I looked at my computer, we had already raised $30,000 before 6 a.m. So that was amazing. Like, all right, this is going pretty well. So the first year ended up really well. We raised over $135,000 for 90 nonprofits, and it was a great success. And so we said, all right, let's do it again. So 2015 was our second year, and you know, so we were the first ones in Montana to do something like this. And after we had this pretty good success, I had talked to some of my colleagues at other community foundations in the state. There are about 75 community foundations throughout Montana, all working to strengthen and better their communities. And some other communities said, hey, let's do this too. Let's throw our hat in the ring. So the second year in 2015, we had Bozeman, Helena, the Flathead, Anaconda, and Glendive all having their own giving days. And you know, so the second year, our goal was $200,000. Our first year, $100,000. Second year, $200,000. And you know, a little friendly competition with Bozeman going on. And so it was about noon, almost noon of that giving day, and we were behind Bozeman. It was their first year having this giving day. They were ahead of us, and I was not super happy because I do have a bit of a competitive streak. And we had gotten the nonprofits together to take a thank you photo. And in the middle of it, someone had said, we're ahead of Bozeman. And we were about $25,000 behind Bozeman, but we had shot ahead. And a local donor had donated $25,000 to Five Valleys Land Trust around noon. That put us over the top, and we did end up beating them that year. We raised $275,000. They raised $235,000 on their first year, so that was amazing. Fantastic. So last year, 2016, we're like, all right, let's go for three. Our goal is $300,000 from 3,000 donors, and we felt good about it. We did a lot of preparation. We were ready to go, and we kicked it off at midnight like we've done before, and you know, things were going okay. You know, woke up the next morning, went to work, and it was about 8:30 a.m. when I noticed that the donations are like really slowing down. They're kind of almost stopping, like trying to figure out what's going on. Come to find out, the platform provider that provide the website for us, their server was being maintained that day. Come to find out, so the website was down almost all day. It was about from 8:30 a.m. to about 7 p.m. People couldn't really donate. but we got creative. we broke the internet that day, and so people couldn't necessarily donate on that website, but they could donate directly to the nonprofits, or they could call, or they could come down to a donor lounge where we had some fun activities going on. And so we rallied as a community, as we do, and we ended up raising over $235,000 for over 130 nonprofits. So we felt pretty good about that. You know, we made lemons into lemonade. And so here we are getting ready for our 4th annual Giving Day. And it used to be called Give Local Missoula, and now it's called Missoula Gives. And we've sort of changed the name, we've changed the day. It's going to be May 4th and 5th from 6 p.m. to 6 p.m., which is a Thursday to a Friday. And again, we have the same goal, $300,000 from 3,000 Missoulians, and we hope that you will all participate and give back to your community. We already have 75 nonprofits signed up, so you can go to the website missoulagives.org starting on April 1st. Pick your favorite nonprofit or nonprofits to give to, and give back to your community and make a positive difference. So I hope that you all participate. Thanks.
Hi. I've never done this before. You can do it! We believe in you! Okay. So I'm going to tell the story about how I ended up in Missoula. It's kind of crazy. I had just graduated from college in New Hampshire, and I was working at a ski area, and I messed up my knee. And I couldn't work, I couldn't do anything else, and a friend of mine called me up and said, "Do you want to drive across country and see the Grateful Dead for New Year's Eve?" And I was like, "Yeah." We had 3 days to get there from New Hampshire to Oakland, and there were 4 of us driving, so we just drove nonstop in my truck. And we all slept. In the back of the truck, we took turns driving and sleeping. And when we got to California, one of my friends, Kenny, said, "I gotta tell you guys something. I have lice." So we're all there at the Grateful Dead show going, shit. We're all itchy. Oh well, what are you gonna do? We're living on the road in the truck. So we go to the Grateful Dead show and we have no tickets. And so we go out in the parking lot looking for tickets. And my friend Kenny hooked me up with a ticket. He found a guy who had a ticket. A miracle. Woohoo! And so I was the only one of my friends that got into the show. And Kenny said, "You're going to the Grateful Dead on New Year's Eve. You should do acid." And I said, okay. So we went around the parking lot and we found the best liquid LSD we could find. And I put it in my hand and I took it. And I went into the show by myself on New Year's Eve. And I had the first and last bad trip I've ever had in my life. Where I actually thought demons were coming after me. And I was amazed that I made it back to my truck after the show. I made it back to the truck, and there was my friend Kenny. And he was sleeping. And I said, "Kenny, you wouldn't believe the night that I had." And he said, "You? I just slept through the Grateful Dead on New Year's Eve." I was like, seriously, there are demons after me. Anyway, so then the next day we got in the truck, we drove back east, and we decided to stop in Missoula, Montana, because somebody we knew lived there. And picked up some guy on the way from the show and gave him a ride. And we get to Missoula, Montana, and we say, "Hey, sorry guy, but we all have lice." So the first place we went in Missoula, Montana, was a laundromat. And we washed all our stuff. And I walked into this laundromat and I was amazed because people were so friendly. They were like, hey, what are you doing here? I don't know, I just stopped in. And they're like, right on, welcome to Missoula. And I thought, this is somewhere I want to be. So I stayed for a few months. I moved away and then I came back 4 years later and I never left. And that's my story. The end.
All right, I'm back. I got a lot of different stories. Some of them are Missoula, some of them are Montana, but this one I think is just fun. Maybe not that fun. In retrospect, it was fun. So I came to Montana because I found a job in the back of a Western Horseman magazine when I was 17. I ran away from home, loaded up my truck, drove to Glacier Park. I got a job as a backcountry guide, leading guided rides on horseback, doing pack trips, all that fun stuff. It was a great time. And I remember this one morning, because we'd all get up, at 4 a.m. and head out to the barn and start feeding the horses, bringing the string in, saddling, brushing, feeding, it was just life on a ranch. And this wasn't really a ranch, it was a dude outfit, but when you got 150 horses around, it's always exciting. So Chad, this really tall cowboy from Utah, and I were heading out. It was pitch dark. We had our headlamps on, and we're heading up to the barn where the feed's fed, which is a little ways away from where the horses were. And we're noticing, man, we look at each other and go, is that barn door ajar? And we're like, yeah, I think it is. Someone must not have shut it last night. And we're always really purposeful of shutting them because of porcupines and bears getting into the feed and stuff. And so as we go up to the door, pitch dark, headlamps on, and we hear this rustling around in there. So the first thought is, there's a porcupine in there eating something. So we open the door and swing it in, and both of us shine our lights from the door, and there's a grizzly bear with his head down deep in one of the buckets. And he pops up, swings around, looks at us, and we look at each other, and I won't say now what we said then, but I don't know who was more shocked, the grizzly bear or us, because he did kind of a complete circle around, and then the only way out was the way he came in, which is where we were. So this probably all happened in a matter of seconds, but to me it was a lifetime. This grizzly bear swings around and just puts his head down and charges straight for us. And so Chad goes one way, I go the other way, but I trip and I fall right in the middle of the doggone door. So as I'm clawing to get out of the way, I feel these feet on my back and a grizzly bear running over the top of me at 4 in the morning in Glacier National Park while I'm squalling like a newborn baby. And Chad's hiding behind the door. The rest of the wranglers are running out of the barn, or the bunkhouse, most of them with their pants half on. And they're running out, and they're hollering at us, going, what's going on? And Chad's like, Jesse just got killed by a grizzly bear. And I'm hollering like, no, I'm alive. I just got run over by one. So that was a good time. I have been run over by a grizzly bear, and I survived. And like I said, I don't know who was more scared, us or the grizz. So come on up, tell a good story, have some fun. Oh, and get some Mike's Ninja while you're at it.
Story, product of the area, and as such I was raised around other individuals that had the same upbringing, just kind of like rural country boys, very cohesive teams of young men that, from a very early age were taught to hunt and to fish and to survive in rural areas. They were taught to, Boy Scout ethics, always be prepared. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong, and in this area particularly, recently in the last 100 years, there's been a heavy Scottish presence, and Scotland in particular has been a host of certain sort of ideals, like a Masonic idealism, where the elders, the journeymen, the masters teach the apprentices, and from an early age, grade after grade, not just my grade, but the whole school, the county, focused on teaching and collaborating with each other to maintain, situational awareness about, the country, politically, economically, and we kind of focused in, and we had conversations about what was going to happen, and the direction of the community and the direction of the state, and not just me, but many of us went through several different positions. When I got out of high school, I joined Montana Conservation Corps, which is a local organization coordinated by, local leaders, environmentalists, and they practice and they preach leave no trace principles, and they teach you how to maintain order and cleanliness in backcountry situations. They teach you how to pack. They teach you how to, maintain a chainsaw, buck and fell trees, knowing which one is, have sap in them, and which one can be used for like a bow drill or a hand drill, which herbs are good for what, that sort of thing. Botany was really important, knowing what kind of protection you need, what kind of rifle, what kind of pistol, and then if you did decide to hunt, after you learned what a gun was and how you used it, to be respectful with it and to be aware with it, and to kind of follow a certain set of principles, so that nobody got hurt, and to once you did make that shot, to tend the animal and to skin it and to quarter it and to drag it home and make it last through the winter. And so, I think that in this area, there is this really strong hunter fisherman presence, Scottish huntermen, and it's just not just Scottish. I mean, the natives have been doing it for long before us. In this area, this hub of this valley, this hub of ranges. You got the Shoshone, you got the Nez Perce, the Flathead, or the Salish, the Kootenai, the Blackfoot. So you get all these tribes in this small vicinity, very unique tribes, that retain their own languages, and they went through, a lot of warfare and combat. And Hellgate Holler over here, the canyon, actually was once an ancient battleground, and they would, for whatever reason, I'm not sure whether, they would draw in foreign troops or entice them or what they were looking for or where they're going. I know that it was a elk hunting grounds, and that elk ranged all over Mount Jumbo just to our east here. So that may have been the reason. I haven't really looked into it thoroughly enough to understand it completely, but I know that there was overwhelming fossil evidence or fossil remains of human body, native descent in that Hellgate Holler. I'm not sure whether it numbered in the dozens or the hundreds, but they would draw them in, and they would descend upon them with tomahawk and arrow, and bloody affair. And then when we moved in, I think Fort Missoula, the museum at Fort Missoula, was intended to stop bloodshed. Meanwhile, hunting the Nez Perce, I think that's what started it. And they built the fort to defend the settlement against foreign invasion, or I guess it would be native invasion. It was their homeland, and we took that from them. And then once we did settle it, we kind of restored that. And then just recently, being a product of the area and having interest in the culture and the history, learning that, this Fort Missoula housing, brought up Montana Conservation Corps, which is an extension, a continuation of the Civilian Conservation Corps, which started in the early 20th century to build the trails and the roads, that we currently recreate upon. And it also was a training ground for World War II soldiers. And then I think during the conflict, they took Italian prisoners and housed them there. And after that, Civilian Conservation Corps, I think, got involved with that. World War II, they had the Japanese there. And then I think through Korea, they didn't have much going on. And by 1960, it became a museum. And now it currently, I think it hosts Forestry Club, which is a local group of foresters, which like to refer to themselves as druids. I think historically the druids were shapeshifters, or they're alchemists. I think there was folklore, mythology retained within their history. But mostly I think they were just kind of like knowledgeable warriors, very, very intuitive, instinctual men that happened to retain some sort of ancient scrolls. I'm not sure how that was continuing on, but me bringing up the Masons, I think that had something to do with it. And in this area, you got generation after generation of firefighters and trail members, and all sorts of just kind of like forest-related fields. Conservationists that go up and they contemplate, the Department of the Interior and how the forests are managed and how we manage the fires and whether we should let it burn or not burn, or whether there are certain species, an abundance of too many species, like wolf issues, water issues, agriculture, incentives, and so you got a lot of different variables encompassing the area. But I think that the primary bullets are like that initial warfare where we kind of dominated the area, and then we moved in and started extracting resources, and now we're kind of realizing those resources are scarce, and we're trying to conserve those resources. Because if we don't conserve them, they won't last. Because if we deplete that battery, that you have in there, you're pulling that electrical load on the battery, and if you don't have an alternator to charge it, to recharge it, then you're looking at a dead battery. So implementing an alternator, a Missoula alternator or a Montana alternator, where you can kind of start recharging and focusing on what's around us, because I think that's like a huge part of the local economy is recreation, and the majority of supplies and the majority of food and materials are imported, so we're like very dependent upon outside forces. And kind of consolidating our own and taking care of our own and being self-sufficient, not just within the family but within the community, is very important, because if we leave ourselves hanging, we're going to be looking at a dead forest, bark beetle coming in, wiping that out, or a forest fire taking out too many acres, or there's a lot of different factors. Species are going extinct at 100,000 times the rate they were 100 years ago. So if we don't say, hey, look, you have to watch how many fish you catch, or you have to watch how many deer you kill or hunt. They can be looking at, a lot less to do, and we'd be stuck in the city, and we wouldn't have the beautiful mountains and the hills and the countryside to occupy our time. We wouldn't be content as we are now. And once we are not content any longer, then that's when the problems arise. That is when we realize we made a mistake too late. Just like we've done so many times, and oftentimes we see that history repeats itself, and we keep making the same mistakes more than once. And if we keep making the same mistakes, I guess it could be a destructive cycle. But I think that locally we got Bike and Walk Missoula, we got Free Cycles, we got Alternative Energy Resources Organization, Montana Renewable Organization. We got all these different programs and internship opportunities. I think that there's more than enough resources to do that, but we just need funding, and we need support. We need people to be aware of what the issues are and how we need to demand action and demand some sort of communicative ability where we can kind of like work together and collaborate together and move on into the future. Because if we don't do that, then we'll just stagnate, and resemble a murky, pond of scum, and we won't ever go anywhere or do anything. And it's like packing for a trip, packing for a long hike. You have to make sure that you're prepared. And if you don't budget, if you don't distribute your resources evenly, and you go out for a week and you eat all your food and you're 100 miles in and you get nothing left, you might have to rely upon the rifle, or you might just starve, And so that's what it's a lot like, is us importing everything like we do and combusting everything, that we don't see. It's not open to our eyes, just what's in our engine, coming out of our exhaust. We're not smoking the exhaust pipe, we're not breathing it in, so we don't really realize where it's going. It just dissipates and then accumulates, and I guess we can look forward to like a smog sunset, like the purple hue of smog, which is always pretty, but it's just not fun to breathe. And I don't think we have that problem yet because we're not as populous as the adjacent states. But if we don't start coming into our own and stepping aside and being like, look, we need to incentivize agriculture. We need to give them some sort of support so that they start growing their own food, Because if the trucks stop running, if the cars stop running, if the electromagnetic pulse, implodes, and our electronic gadgets don't work anymore, what will we do? I don't know. Who knows what? We'll be stuck. Maybe we just go back to the horse-drawn wagon, and we cut the roads, and we just go back to a cobblestone existence. I don't know. That might be a happy utopia, like a dynatopia. But I think that if we don't prepare, we don't start implementing those hybrid vehicles, and we have to start, riding our motorcycles. We want 70 miles per gallon. We don't want like a 15 mile per gallon, hog, like raging down the road too loud, pulling too much electricity. It's getting you somewhere, but what it's doing in the meantime, it's important to sacrifice the luxury of your big old F-250 for maybe like a little, pink Prius. You could just take the Prius and you can maybe just like give it a little camouflage paint job, and then it'll be more masculine, and then it'll be acceptable. So when you pull up and you decide you want to, take a girl out on a date, you'd be like, you'd be there with your camo Prius, and that would be a lot better than your F-250, because nobody likes that truck anyway. So, yeah, that's my story, and I hope you enjoy it.
Um, I just want to say first that thank you to Jesse for the work and Daniel in Fort Missoula for stepping out of the museum and making so much effort to bring the information that I think all of you should just check it out because it's super interesting. I learned things that I've never knew before. To a public space close to everybody's house, and so you don't need to go there, which you should, because they have beautiful buildings and there's a big history in the Fort Missoula as well. I haven't been and I need to. I appreciate you choosing this space to kind of bring this close to the community. Yes, you're welcome. I also would like to let you all know that another way of us helping and supporting their work today is one of the things we can do besides the space. 50 cents of each beer for the whole day to donation to you guys, so you can keep spreading the word, right? And I have to tell a story because that's what I committed myself to. I don't like to do that, but I'll do it. First, so I met my husband, Robert Rivers, that is the brewer here that some of you know, out abroad through work in Romania, and it ended up that he wanted me to come and see his family and meet his family. And the first place that I landed when I came to Montana was Missoula. And that was because it worked better to come here and not to Helena, where his family was at. And I landed in Missoula, and he picked me up with flowers and a big sign, and we had breakfast with his grandfather, which now is not around anymore, and then we drove straight to Helena. So I didn't get to know Missoula very well at that point, and we spent most of that month of December in Helena, and then we went to Brazil for him to meet my family and the people where I am from. So after that, it ended up that we had to wait, and we had a kind of I don't know how to say that, but we were waiting on a contract to work abroad, and it ended up that we found a house sitting in Missoula. So we spent 6 months here hanging out, house sitting for a couple friends, and during the whole summer of 2008. And that was the time that I discovered that there was a huge Brazilian community here, and I got to know some people, and we got to reconnect with some other friends as well. And that was the time when we left Missoula after 6 months to work abroad. We both looked at each other and we said, it would be so cool if at some point when we decide to settle down, that we can settle down in Missoula. It's such a good, we felt really welcomed by the community. So it ended up that it happened that we are settled here again after a long time. After 2008, 2012, we decided that this was the place that we were going to settle, and this is what we were going to open. So that's the story. And the other thing why Missoula is so dear to me is that's where my husband proposed to me and said that he wanted to marry me. So Missoula is important to us, and especially now that we know so many people, you that come here and the people that we engage every day by, at the bar, at the tap room, or in an event. So I just want to thank you and thank Missoula for being what it is. I think it is a vortex. There's so many people that said, I arrived here, I came here, and I never left. And that's a story that I hear so many times in a repeated way from a lot of people. So Missoula is special, and keep enjoying it, keep taking care of it, keep taking care of each other. Thank you.
Nice and close. All right, you got it? You got a good shot? All right, cool. Hello, everybody. I'm Scott Ramp. I am a employee at Missoula Community Access Television, and I should be filming this, but instead I am on camera telling my story about, actually, my Missoula story, which basically is my whole life, because I'm from Missoula. I'm one of the few people I've met, in my adult life that's from Missoula. And I gotta say, like, I'm definitely not the Montana type. I'm definitely the kind of person who's, there's no right word of saying this, but I'm very indoorsy. Because when you grow up in a place that you know so much of, you go outside and it's like, oh look, there's Mount Sentinel again. Oh, there's the M. Oh, there's an L. Cool. Oh, the river, Clark Fork River. Okay. My parents would tell me, you probably shouldn't go swimming there. And I was like, oh, why not? You got that water treatment facility right there. It's like, oh, I guess that makes sense. So, I never would go on the river or do anything like that and whatnot like that. Growing up in Missoula, it's for me, it's like, I gotta say, probably the best representation of who I am is kind of bratty. I see a bunch of these development and things that happen in Missoula. I remember when North Reserve, where you see Albertsons and Walmart and all those places, it was nothing. It was just barren, dirt, land. All you see was Reserve Street that is jettisoned right through all the way to Grand Creek. It's basically kind of like, imagine what Grand Creek is in that area, but it's kind of like barren, just getting ready for development and whatnot like that. And we called it the new Super Walmart. Super Walmart, that was a pit that would fill up every summer with water. Every year, it would fill with water, and I'd be like, I wonder if I can go swim in that. My mom would be like, don't swim in that. Don't swim in that. I'm like, okay, that's cool. But this is kind of like a three-part story. Just kind of telling about different aspects, because I grew up in a suburban neighborhood in Missoula. In a suburb, it's a developing suburban neighborhood. So the really cool thing that I really got to, get into trouble was a lot of construction crews would leave their equipment. So, of course, I had to go explore and try to figure out how some of these things worked. So my first story is when I was 5 years old, I was preschool, I got my first bike, and growing up with two older sisters, I had a pink bike. So I had a nice little pink bike, and I would ride it around with my friend Jason, who just lived down the street. And one time they had this huge dirt mound. We'd have dirt clog wars and all this stuff, but we decided to take our bikes up to the very highest point of the dirt pile. We'd go down so many different times. One time I went down a little too fast and I fell. I just tumbled. I got really dirty. I was just like, I wasn't worried about the bruises or scrapes. I was more like, okay, I gotta go home, maybe clean myself up. So I went home. I took off my clothes and be like, okay, it's just my arms and legs. So I decided to quickly wash my arms and legs, maybe splash some water on my face, get some new clothes on, and I was back at it again. And I'm gonna kind of mesh these two stories together, and this is more like a cautionary tale. So one time there was a house that was half-built. I decided to be like, hey, I'm just gonna go check this half-built house in my neighborhood. So I went to the half-built house and I was like, this is pretty cool. And I saw this, so it was like construction glue. So I decided to put it on my hands and I decided to play with it like I would play with Play-Doh or anything like that. So incidentally, 4 to 6 weeks, I'd have to deal with peeling off the glue from my hands. And this was my first introduction into alcohol, because I would have to put my hands soaking in alcohol. So I soaked it in alcohol probably once a night for 4 to 6 weeks in that construction glue. All right, so this last story, part of the getting in trouble with a developing rural area, there was a huge cat construction, that digs up big mounds and big things here and there. I decided this is when I was a teenager, so there shouldn't be an excuse for me being some kind of, being stupid or anything like that. I was 16 years old. I decided to go up into one of those things and be like, I'm gonna go check it out and whatnot. I knew for myself, it's if I started this thing, I would have gotten in huge trouble. but I was with a couple other people. Another kid named Mike, who lived down the street. We went up inside of it, and it was like, I wonder how you get this to work. And I was just like, you probably just, push that in and then turn the knob. And of course, he had to push it in and turn the knob. And so the thing started up, and I was like, what are we gonna do? And the thing was just rumbling and shaking. This thing was huge. It was a huge, just like can dig up anything and everything. And we're just spending this whole time trying to just figure out how to turn this thing off and be like, okay, how do I turn this off? So I was like, if I can figure out how to turn it on, maybe I can figure out how to turn it off. So it's like one of those things where it's like a push start, but then and then everything was getting kind of out of control. A bunch of the kids who were with us were starting to scatter. One of our neighbors, who was a police officer, came down with his police car, and by that time all the kids were cleared out, and I was just standing my ground. And I was there, and I decided to be like, okay, then I finally figured out, I don't know how I figured it out, but it was like a knob. It wasn't even like a turn key or anything. It was like a weird knob. I just pushed it down. It's like everything just stopped. So I climbed out, got there, and there's my neighbor cop standing outside his cruiser with his hands on his side, and I walked right up to him and just like, I figured it out. And that was my Missoula, Montana story about growing up in a developing neighborhood in the suburbs of Missoula, Montana. Thank you.
I'm going to do a kind of a last call for stories. We're going to start wrapping it up. So if anyone has a story to share, if you've been run over by a grizzly, you've done something slightly maybe not legal, you have maybe had a gopher in a family plot, you never know. Things out there, it's just a lot of fun. We all have stories to tell. So we're going to start wrapping it up. So come on down. We got about 30 more minutes to go. Share your stories, make some Montana memories, have a good time, and just come on down. All right, we got a taker.
Okay, this story actually doesn't take place in Montana, but it has to do with my grandmother. She was 91 years old when she died. She's a little old French-Canadian lady. Her parents came over from Canada shortly before she was born, and she grew up in the northeast part of North Dakota. And she's a very sweet lady. She liked to speak French, but pretty much ignored. She could speak English to get along. And spent many, many happy hours with her playing canasta, and she would tell us ghost stories and all kinds of neat things. She was also she had a tendency to be very worried about what the neighbors would think. And over the years, as she frowned on you if you misbehaved in church, or if you were a little bit too much ruckus outside, and that might cast shadows on the good name of the family. At any rate, she was 91 years old, and she finally became very, very sick. She was living in a nursing home, and she couldn't play canasta anymore. And we all gathered around. It was Grandma's last days, and so the family came in. Some came from Detroit, Michigan area, others from Minnesota and California. And they all gathered around to be at the deathbed. In the end, all she could talk about, she just talked in French, and she passed away. And so we, after a few days, we gathered. There was a ceremony at the church, and candles were all lit, and the family gathered around. And they chose for the pallbearers the grandchildren. And I was the second oldest of them. There was my cousin Jim and myself, cousin Joe, and a few others, some from Minnesota, I was from North Dakota at the time. And we gathered around, and they placed us at the head of the graveyard. Now, unbeknown to us, the undertaker had called called my Aunt Edna and told her that the vault wasn't ready, but they'd put Grandma in carry out the gravesite ceremony, she was in her casket, and they'd lay her down in lay the casket down in, the priest would come and they'd do the final blessings. And we didn't know about this. But at any rate, the undertaker came when he got back up to the cemetery, and he positioned the 5 of us pallbearers at the top of the grave. The priest and the close family members were at the bottom of the grave with various relatives and friends scattered about along the edges. Now, the priest began his service. He was an Irishman with a very thick brogue. And he began the service, and he talked about our grandmother and her suffering, and he talked about comparing it to the good Jesus on the cross. And he really had worked into this ceremony, this funeral service. And so we're standing there, I'm listening to this, and suddenly my cousin to my right digs his elbow at me. He's got a great big grin on his face, and he says, "Look at that." I said, "What?" He said, "Look over there." And I was getting really annoyed with him. And I said, "I can't." And I just tried looking straight ahead. Then he poked me one more time and pointed. There, only seen by us, in the bottom of the grave was a gopher. And this poor gopher was trying to get out of the grave. He'd run up and hit the wall. He'd go up and he'd fall back down. He'd run up, fall back down. Run up, fall back down. Jim now was giggling like mad. So was one of the others who caught on. And another cousin pointed to the other side. "What in the world's going on with you guys?" I says, "What must go up has to come down." And he looked and saw the gopher running up and falling down, running up and falling down. The priest suddenly sees us, and he is furious. And the old aunties, the 70s and the 80s, they look at us, blazing eyes. How could we be so cruel and wicked, laughing up there? Well, I could see what's going to happen. So I quickly changed into the crying mode. It's not that difficult to go from laughing to crying. And so I really put on a show. And immediately, the undertaker comes and he collars us. I'm 38 years old. He's collaring me and my 40-year-old cousin and drags us off the side and everybody else. Aunt Edna, who's probably about 58 at the time, she comes marching over, blazing. "What in the world are you guys up to?" And cousin Jim, Aunt Alma's son, he looks at her and says, "There's a gopher in the grave, and they can't get out." And Aunt Edna marches over there, and she looks in there, and she sees it. The poor gopher trying to get out, but he can't because it's too high and too steep. And so what happens, she marches over the undertaker, collars him, hauls him over there to pointing this thing out, and the aunties, then she goes over and explains to the aunties what's been going on. And I remember one of the aunties looking at me and at the others, me with a little bit of approval, the others was grim. "Well, at least he was crying," she said. And later, it all worked out for the better. We gathered at the parish hall for the dinner. The parish priest said he wasn't going to come because he was so furious with everybody, but they talked him into coming, and he did the grace and everything like that. And overall, everything worked out fine. My own theory is that in the Catholic tradition, we pay for our sins. Whether Jesus died for you or not, you're going to pay. And so my grandma, with this constant worry about the neighbors and what they're going to think, she had to undergo that final little bit of humiliation to make up for all those sins of worrying about the neighbors. And so that's my story.
Okay, so I'm going to tell the story of my first grizzly bear encounter as a non-native Montanan. I hail from eastern Washington, where there are not grizzly bears wandering around everywhere. this past summer, we were hiking in the Bob Marshall, and we had spent a lovely weekend hiking up to Prairie Reef Lookout. If anybody's hiked up to Prairie Reef Lookout, it's gorgeous. We were on our way back. It was a 30-mile weekend, so I was pretty tired, and I was going with my boyfriend, who has a lot more backcountry experience than I do, and being a nerd and being someone who loves information, I have read every piece of bear safety information that the Park Service has put out. I've read every instruction manual for every bear spray manufacturer. Like, I need to know what to do just in case. And so we were hiking out, and I was leading, and we were on, I think it's best to describe it with a mountainside. So the trail is on the side of a mountain. I don't know how far into the backcountry we are. Not very far, maybe like 20 miles or something. But so we're hiking on a slope, the mountain goes this way, the trail is just right along the edge of it. And we're hiking and being noisy, and like you're supposed to, the bear manual says you're supposed to be noisy so they know you're there. And I rounded a corner, and I was yammering away, and there is a really big deer up on the side of the mountain. I'm like, oh shit, that is a big deer. And I was like, oh, that's a grizzly bear, and it is 20 yards away from me. And my boyfriend's walking behind me. He's here laughing at me right now. And he's walking behind me, and I stop as soon as I see the bear, and I go, buh, 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 and start backing up. But he's still hiking forward because we're leaving the wilderness. And so we're bashing into each other. And then I remembered my AAU basketball days when I was a child and did a nice pick and roll around him. And he was in front of the bear. And a great display of bravery on my part. And I proceeded to grab my bear spray and shake it and try to turn it around. I couldn't get the latch off, and then I realized that I'm pointing the bear spray towards my face, which is directly what the manual said not to do. You are not to spray it on yourself. It is not a repellent. It is something else. So I have the bear spray pointed at my face, and Stefan's looking at the bear, and I'm trying to get the cap off, and I'm standing there, okay, what do we do? Like, we have to leave. Like, we can't live in the wilderness forever. We have to go by this bear. And it's digging under a stump, and it kind of doesn't notice us at all. So we're the wrong way with the wind. And we pause, and I whisper frantically to him, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? How do we? And I thought the bear could hear that, but it couldn't. So eventually Stefan just goes, hey bear. Hey bear. And it whips its head up from under the log and just looks at us. And we look at it, and we all look at each other for like, I don't know, it felt like 30 seconds. I'm sure it was 5. And then eventually the bear just kind of like turns and walks up the hill. Like, does not care at all what we are doing, just walks away. And then we hike very, very fast for the next 7 miles. Probably the fastest I've ever hiked, except for that time that Stefan gave me Giardia by not filtering the water properly. So we can talk about that story a different time. But that is my first time encountering a bear in Montana.
Okay, I don't really have a story, but I do have a lot of really great Missoula memories because I too am from here and have spent a lot of time here. Left for a while, like so many of us do, but I'm back. So I just want to bring up a couple things that I remember that make Missoula really special to me. And maybe some of you will have memories of these similar times or occasions or events. So starting off, one of my very favorite memories of Missoula ever is having the opportunity to do the Marshall Mountain after-school ski program. Seriously, the best time of my life. Getting out of school, piling so many kids on a bus. They all have just a massive amount of ski gear and sack lunches, and it's just crazy. We can't wait to get up there, and everyone's screaming and eating candy, and it's just insane. And then we go up to Marshall Mountain, and it's generally not snowing, and the mountain is just a pure sheet of ice, and you can see a lot of rocks and grass, and there's very few lights at all. But wow, those were some of the best times of my life. I probably almost died up there multiple times. but so much fun after school night skiing at Marshall Mountain. So thank you, Missoula, for that great memory. Another really cool thing that I remember about Missoula that makes it very special to me, I grew up on the South Hills, and those of us that grew up on the hill were lucky enough to have a gorgeous view of Missoula, and it has definitely expanded over the years, so it does not look like it used to at all. But when I was young and I first got my driver's license, I remember being able to drive really far up by the mansion up there and be able to go all the way to the top and sit up there on that knoll and look down on Missoula, and it used to look, the lights at night would make it look like the outline of the United States of America. And that was so cool. I mean, that is definitely a really cool memory that has stuck with me for a long time, and those of us that were lucky enough to see that, super cool. Thank you again, Missoula. Another really cool memory about Missoula, I've got a few. And somebody recently, I think, wrote a story about this gentleman, but if anybody ever had any encounters with Tommy the Leprechaun, wow, what a character. He would sing songs, he would tell you riddles, he would play music, and he really thought he was a leprechaun. So he was just a special character that Missoula had for decades and decades. Yes, nice, nice. So if anybody knows what I'm talking about, Tommy the Leprechaun, here's to you, sir. For sure, he was a great guy. Let's see here, I thought I had a few others, but I think, let me think for 1 second. Oh, yeah, I guess I have one other I'd like to share. So, here in Montana, we definitely like to do some drinking, and that's always been a thing, here. I have really great memories of playing a sport called broomball that I think recently just made a comeback to the Parks and Rec Department, but I guarantee it is not like it used to be. That was a crazy awesome sport. If you aren't familiar with broomball, it's played on an ice field, like a hockey rink, and you wear your shoes, and you take brooms, and there's a rubber ball about like so that you hit back and forth on the ice rink and try to put it into goals. Now that game is really rough. There's a lot of full contact, a lot of combat, a lot of tripping, needless to say, a lot of drinking. So some great memories. Thank you, Missoula City Parks and Rec, for having broomball and having a great winter sport for people to get out there and have fun of all ages. And thank you for bringing it back to Missoula. All right. I would say my final memory is being here drinking beer, which is one of my favorite things. I was lucky enough at age 18 to get a job working at the Old Byron Brewery on 3rd Street. If anybody has any memories of the 3rd Street Byron, wow, another really special thing that, participating in the breweries that very first started in Missoula, it was like hanging out in somebody's garage, drinking beer, and few rules. I mean, it was just a different scene. It would never fly like that ever again. But another really cool memory is just the breweries and what they've done for our town, and my opportunities working with them at age 18 and getting a good love for beer. So thank you, Missoula, and your love for beer. Coming out to Imagination Brewing and making Montana memories tonight with the Historical Museum at Fort Missoula. Woohoo! And is Nadia in the house? Because you just won. If not, I'll give you a buzz. All right, thank you guys. It's been a hoot.